Salvete omnes. In this video, we're talking direct objects, how to identify them, what they look like in English, how to find them in a Latin sentence, how to translate them, sentences, English to Latin, and Latin to English. Let's first start off with a couple of English examples. The sailor tells a story. In this sentence, sailor is the subject of our sentence. Tells is the actions, what the sailor is doing. Who or what is the sailor telling? That is the story. The direct object is the item that receives the action from the subject of the sentence. So in order to have a direct object, we have to have an action verb for action to be received. In other words, direct objects will always be used with action verbs. We will not see them with linking verbs. Another example. We will attack the town. In this sentence, the subject is we. And the verb is will attack. It's in the future tense. The word will lets us know that's in the future tense. Who or what will we attack? We will attack the town. That's our direct object. It's what's receiving the action. Now let's look at some Latin sentences. Puella pupas portabant. I always think it's a good idea to start off first by highlighting or underlining your endings. So in this sentence, that's going to be the A in puella, the AS in pupas, and the BAT in portabat. Latin sentences, the verbs are the power word. They're the word that's in control. So I always think it's a great idea to start first with the verb. The verb portabat is third person, singular, and perfect tense. Then we go back and we do the parsing for the rest of the sentence. Puella is feminine, singular, nominative, and pupas is feminine, plural, accusative. Now, sometimes a student will look at that AS and think, oh, how do I know that's plural accusative and not second person singular present tense? Because it kind of looks like a verb there. Well, there's a couple of things that helps us tell that apart. First of all, if you know your vocabulary, you know that word for pupas is a doll. It's not a verb. But secondly, maybe even more importantly, is we already have the verb portabat. And we're not going to have another main action verb unless we have a compound sentence in some sort of conjunction, which we don't have here. Now we want to do our labels. Puella is in the nominative case. The two options for the nominative case noun jobs are either subject noun or predicate nominative. But predicate nominative has to be used with the linking verb, and portabat is an action verb. Therefore, since there is an action verb, there can be no predicate nominative. So our nominative here has to be the subject of the sentence. Likewise, pupas as the accusative has two options. It could either be the direct object or it could be the object of the preposition. But there's no preposition here, so if there's no preposition, there's no object of the preposition. Therefore, this accusative is our direct object. And as we've already established, our verb is an action verb. We label it as V. Now, a common mistake a lot of students make when they're first learning how to translate is they then want to read the Latin left to right like we would in an English sentence. If we do that, we're going to get something along the lines of, the girl dolls carry. That doesn't make any sense. Don't do that. Don't read it left to right. If you do, the sentence will either sound like complete gibberish, or it'll sound like you're talking like Yoda, or maybe a little bit of both. So what you want to do is you want to ask yourself a series of questions. First of all, what is the subject of the sentence? Well, the subject of the sentence is puella. That's girl, the girl. It's singular, so I make sure that that's singular in my translation. Do I have anything modifying girl, like an adjective or a prepositional phrase? I don't. So I move on to my verb. What is the girl doing? Imperfect tense, was carrying. I got to make sure I use the right helping word to make sure it goes along with the tense that I've identified. The girl was carrying. Who or what was the girl carrying? That's our direct object. The girl was carrying the dolls. Again, make sure that if you said it's plural, that it matches your translation. Very common mistake for people to partial label something correctly, but then miss it on the translation. Use the parsing and labeling as your roadmap to help you with your translation. Let's look at another sentence. Reginam apognabimus. Again, we're going to highlight endings. So we've got the am in reginam and the bimus in apognabimus. The parsing for reginam is, let's do the verb first. I forgot my own thing, didn't I? So we want to do the verb. The verb is first person, plural, future tense, and reginam is feminine, singular, accusative. Again, accusative could either be direct object or object of the preposition, but since there's no preposition here, it's our direct object. And a pugnabimus, that verb means to attack. That's something we can do, so it's an action verb. Now, common mistake people will make here is they will say, the queen will attack. If you do this, you have just fallen for what I call one of the classic blunders. If you're a fan of the movie The Princess Bride, there's a great scene where Vizzini says, you just committed one of the classic blunders. The first is never start a land war in Asia. The second is never get in a battle of wits with a Sicilian when death is on the line, and then he dies from the poison. But the third, the one that happens all the time in Latin, is do not presume that the first word of the sentence is the subject of the sentence simply because it's the first word. Remember, friends, case tells us the noun's job in the sentence. Reginam is not the subject of the sentence. It's our direct object. We don't have a subject here. There's no nominative identified. In Latin, if that happens, you look to your verb. The verb is first person plural, so that's going to be we. It's future tense, so we need to make sure we use the right helping word. So we will attack. Who or what will we attack? We will attack the queen. Now let's go back and look at those examples that we did earlier in the video, and let's translate these into English. The sailor tells a story. Well, sailor is our subject noun, tells is our verb, story is our direct object. The first thing we want to do when translating it into English is we want to remember traditional Latin word order. Traditional Latin word order is subject noun, direct object, verb. So sailor is my subject noun, so I need to use the nominative case for that. It's going to be singular because there's only one sailor. So that's going to be nauta. Story is next. It's my direct object. There's only one story here, so again, it's going to be singular. But this time it's going to be accusative case. So that's going to be fabulum. And then lastly, we have the verb. Now, the verb, we have to kind of think about this a little bit more. Our verb to carry is porto, portare, but the sentence is tells is nero, narrare. Sorry about that. And we find the stem for narrare by chopping off the re. What's left, nerda, is the stem. To that stem, we are going to add our ending. So we have to ask ourselves, is this first, second, or third person? If it was first person, the subject would be I or we. That's not the case. It's not first person. If it was second person, the subject would be you or y'all. That's not the case. It's not second person. Third person is he, she, it, they, or if you ever have a separate nominative noun serving as the subject, then you know you're dealing with a third person sentence. So this is third person. There's only one sailor, so it's third person singular, and it's in the present tense. So we need the third person singular present tense ending, and that is nerdat. Let's look at another one. We will attack the town. Again, we is the subject, attack is the verb, town is the direct object. Traditional Latin word order is subject, noun, direct object, verb. Except for my students at this point don't know the separate standalone word for we. So we're not going to have a subject noun in this sentence. It's simply going to be direct object verb. So direct object is town. It's singular. It's going to be in the accusative case. So that's operatum. And then attack is our verb. So that's a pugnare. We get the stem by taking off the re. What's left? A pugna is our stem. We then add our ending. So what person is it? We, well, that's first person, plural, will attack, future tense. So we need to add the first person, plural, future tense ending. And so that's going to be apognabimus. So remember, guys, you can have a Latin sentence with no nominatives in it. You can get your subject from the verb. That's why you always want to check out the verb first. All right, let's do one more example that's a little bit different from what we saw before. Was the maid servant carrying the dolls? Here we have a question, and that changes things just a little bit. Our subject in this sentence is maidservant, so we can figure that out pretty easily. But our verb here is was carrying. We can't forget the helping words here. Even though maidservant's in the middle here because of the question, the verb is was carrying. That's imperfect, and we need to make sure we remember that when it comes time to add our endings. Who or what was the maidservant carrying? They were carrying the dolls. That's our direct object. So traditional Latin word order is subject, noun, direct object, verb. But whenever you have a question, the word order changes a little bit. We shift the verb to the beginning of the sentence to let us know that we're asking a question rather than a traditional statement. So carrying is our verb. That's porto, portare. We get our stem by chopping off the RE. What's left? Porta is our stem. We then add our ending. Well, we have a subject noun here, so that's going to be third person. It's singular, and we've already identified this as imperfect tense. So we need to add the third person singular imperfect tense ending. So that's going to be portabat. But we're not quite finished yet. Because this is a question, we then have to add the ending ne. So it's portabatne. That starts our sentence. Now we're ready for maidservant. It's singular and needs to be in the nominative case. That's ankala. And then our last word is dolls. That needs to be plural, accusative case, pupas. Now, one last thing we have to make sure that we do. This is a question, so don't forget that question mark. Punctuation matters. So that's a brief introductory rundown on direct objects and how we use them in Latin sentences. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I hope you have a great day. Wale.